And welcome to Author's Excerpt Sunday podcast. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Miss Teri M Brown, and I would like to say hello, Miss Brown, and how are you doing today?
I
How are
am
you doing
doing
today?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Miss Teri, tell us about your author journey as a writer and what inspired you to start writing.
So, when I was a little girl, I said I wanted to be an author. But I also said I wanted to be an Olympic ice skater,
Oh, okay.
and I said that I wanted to be a brain surgeon. So,
Okay.
I'm not real sure that I knew what I wanted, but I knew I loved books. And
Mhm,
I have been obsessed with books
mhm.
I never remember not loving books. My
Okay.
mom used to tell me all the time, go outside and play. Would you go outside? And so I
Mhm,
would open my window and I would put a book out on the ledge and I would go outside and get my book and then I would climb a tree and read my book. So I've
mhm.
always been really involved in books. But then I got married, I had children, and it's writing being a writer is not something my parents thought was a real occupation.
Mhm.
Right. And so when I went to college, there wasn't not going to be any, degree in writing. And then like I said, I got married and I had children. I ended up divorced. I
Mhm.
remarried.
Mhm.
And that remarriage was a really, really bad marriage. And it was emotionally abusive. And I wanted very much to be an author at that point. I was writing for small businesses,
Mhm.
doing things like their content and their copy for their website, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But I wanted to be a real writer, but I was too afraid. And
Oh,
when you're in an abusive relationship like that, you don't have a real soft place to land. And I
yeah.
needed somebody that could, like hang on to me if it didn't go well, right? I
Okay.
got out of that relationship in 2017
Mhm.
and the words started falling out of me. And I
Mhm.
wrote several manuscripts, but I wasn't letting anyone look at them because I was still terrified.
Okay.
I met my now husband. I was
Mhm.
never getting married again, by the way, but I ended up finding someone who he tells everyone that he chased me until I caught him.
Okay.
And we got married and we went on an amazing adventure.
Mhm.
We rode across the United States
Okay.
on a tandem bicycle.
Okay.
3,102 miles on a bicycle, pulling a trailer.
Okay.
And I had not been on a bicycle when I met him. I hadn't been on a bicycle in 40 years.
Oh,
So
okay.
this was huge for me. And
Mhm.
when we made it from Oregon to Washington, D.C., and we're
Mhm.
pulling up to our destination, I
Mhm.
realized I could do anything if I
Yeah.
set my mind to it. And I
Yes.
decided I wanted to be an author. And
Okay.
14 months later, so in January of 2022,
Mhm.
my first book, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, came out.
Okay. All right. All right. So I know that had to be a kind of like that was an astonishing feat
It
to
was, yeah,
ride a bicycle across the United States.
exactly.
How many days did that take?
So it was 72 riding days, but we were out a little over 90 days because you
Oh.
have to take rest days. You
Mhm.
don't just ride every single day. Sometimes the weather's bad, and
Oh.
sometimes you just don't feel good. Like you just need a break. And
Mhm.
so we left at the end of June and
Mhm.
we got back at the beginning of October.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what inspired you to write the your current
That my newest one,
yes, your newest
yeah.
book, Daughters
Yeah.
of the um
Nope, Daughters of Green Mountain Gap.
yeah,
Yeah.
Daughters of
Yep.
Green Mountain Gap. I'm sorry,
That's
excuse me.
right. No, that's quite all right. So I would love for it to be something amazing, but it
Mhm.
started out because I had a wart.
Oh.
And I had a wart on my thumb and I had gone to my regular doctor just for a regular checkup and I said, "Hey, while
Mhm.
I'm in here, can you get this wart off my thumb?" And
Okay.
she said, "Oh no. We're going to have to send you to a specialist." And
Okay.
I thought, you've got to be kidding.
Kidding
So I
me.
was complaining to my brother about the fact that
Mhm.
primary care doctors don't do anything anymore. They
Mhm.
just send you off to specialists. And
Yes.
then I told him about my wart. And he said, "Well, why didn't you get someone to talk it off?"
Okay.
Well, I'd never heard of that. And I said,
Right.
what are you talking about? And
Uh-huh.
he said, yeah, I got a buddy that talks off words.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm really gullible, and so I
Oh,
figured he was just telling me a tall tale so that he could tease me about it later. But
okay.
when we got off the phone, I looked it up, and there are people who can talk off words.
Oh,
And
okay.
there are people who can whisper to a baby and get the baby to flip in the womb if the baby's faced the wrong way.
Oh,
And the more I dug, the more I found out that there were people that were these healers, and
mhm.
in the mountains of North Carolina, they're known as granny women.
Okay.
And as soon as I hit that area and I started reading about granny women,
Mhm.
Maggie, who's one of the main characters in the book, kind of was born in my head. And
Okay.
she just started telling me, like, I've got a story and you've got to write this story. And so it all just started because of something simple like having a wart on my thumb.
Oh, okay. All right. So, can you share a brief summary of, of your Daughters
Yeah.
of Green Mountain Gap book?
Yeah, I can. So, Daughters of Green Mountain Gap follows three generations of healers.
Mhm.
There's Maggie. She's a granny woman, so she uses roots and herbs and what I say is a little bit of mountain magic. Like, she just
Okay.
has this ability to see and do things that others don't. She
Mhm.
has a daughter, Carrie Ann.
Yes.
Carrie Ann does not like the way her mother does medicine, and she believes that we should be doing things in a more modern way. Now, this was in the 1890s, but
Okay.
still, she went on and became a nurse. And she
Okay.
came back to her little community in the mountains with a
Yes.
doctor in tow. And she believes that she's going to bring modern medicine to her community.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some people like the new doctor, but a lot of people would prefer to stay with the granny woman they've known all their lives. And
Okay.
so it kind of sets up this, little angst between the two.
Yes.
Carrie Ann also has a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and this daughter has spent a lot of time with her grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and she sees the good that her grandmother does, but she
Mm-hmm.
also sees the good that her mother does, and she's trying to figure out, if I too want to be a healer, who
Mm-hmm.
do I follow? And
Yeah.
so it kind of follows their journey through all of this, who has it right,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yeah.
in the end, we all know that there's no such thing as perfect medicine,
Right.
because and that's kind of that's what we learn in the book. So
Oh. Okay. So, what was the most challenging aspect of writing this book?
I think for me, I love research, and there was a lot of research, but it was making sure that the kinds of things that I was saying that the granny woman was doing could have
Mhm.
actually been done. And
Okay.
not just done by a granny woman, but done by a granny woman in the mountains of North Carolina in the 1890s.
Okay.
So, for instance, in today's world, we still have granny women. There are still people who do this, but they
Mm-hmm.
have access to roots and things from China and India and other places, and they can have them sent to them. But in the 1890s, my granny woman, Maggie, would have only had access to what she could find near her home. And
Okay.
so I would look up possible remedies for things, and then I would have to go through and determine, is that grown in North Carolina? And
Mm-hmm.
not just in North Carolina, but in the North Carolina mountains. Is
Yes.
it possible for Maggie to have gotten her hands on that?
Okay.
And so that was one of the hardest aspects, was just making sure that I stayed true to the area and didn't have her using some crazy substance that she could have never gotten her hands on.
Okay. So, how is your writing approach? How do you approach your writing with the writing process?
I am very much a pantser. And so, for the audience, in case they don't know what that is, that's someone who writes by the seat of their pants. So
Okay.
I don't do an outline. I
Okay.
just start listening to my characters and I just start writing. But I always have a notebook sitting beside me. And
Mhm.
as I'm typing, and I'll realize, oh, for this to happen, I
Mhm.
need to mention something earlier. And
Mhm.
so I will make a quick note in my notebook that
Yeah.
says, prior to chapter 9, I need to mention that Maggie's grandfather was Italian.
Okay.
And I write that down. And so when I go back later and start making my edits, I
Yes.
have this nice little notebook of things that I know I needed to add, because if I had plotted it out, I
Mhm.
probably would have already known that. But I don't know what's coming until I start writing it.
Okay.
I also don't write every day. I
Mhm.
tend to write when the mood hits me. I
Yeah.
think about it every day. You know, and I'm even trying scenarios out in my head to see how things go. And then all of a sudden, things will start coming together in my mind. And then I sit down and I write, and I could write for hours.
Okay.
Just hours and hours and hours. And then nothing for a little while I go back into figuring things out. So.
Okay. So how do you balance your writing with your personal life? How do you balance?
Yeah, it can be difficult. And not just writing with my personal life, but writing and marketing the books that you have out there and your personal life. And right now, my husband, he has brain cancer. And so I'm his caregiver. And so that even adds a whole nother dimension to it. And I think that the way that I do it is I know that I want to do something writing every day. And I know the things that are most important to me, and that's my husband and my family. And I put those things first. And then I sit with my calendar and I say, okay, I've got this little block of time and this is what I'm going to do in this block of time. I keep lists. That's pretty much how I do it, is I keep a list. And I look at my list in the middle of the afternoon and it's like, oh, okay, do I need to adjust this list, or can I still get all of this done? And what am I going to do in what order, and how am I going to make that happen? And every day is different.
Okay.
You know, like you want it. I would love to be able to say, this is what I do. Every day I wake up and I do this, but my life just doesn't go that way. I guess some people's does, but mine never does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you hope the readers will gain from this masterpiece?
Thank you for calling it a masterpiece. I hope that several things. One, I hope that they start to really look at this idea. You know, we get new and shiny things, modern things that come in, and we're really quick to throw out the old.
Okay.
When there's a lot of good to the old. And so I hope that maybe we'll start looking at that. Like, it's okay to embrace modern technology, but it's still okay to, you know, write a letter to your grandmother. You know, like you don't just have to do email. Like, you can actually write a letter, right?
Yes.
So that's one thing. And another thing is this story, we see Maggie reach out to a Cherokee medicine man, and she learns a lot from him. And a lot of her peers don't like this, because they look at the Cherokee as savages, as, you know, they're not Christian, and so therefore we shouldn't do anything. And Maggie sees it and says, you know, there's a lot of good in what they do.
Yes.
And how can I look at what they do and hang it on my own values?
Yes.
So she's a Christian woman, but she says, yes, they say things like, you know, Mother Nature, and that all of these different gods, but I know that it's one God. And so as long as I know that, then why wouldn't it be okay for me to take some of what I've learned from them and use it, as long as I'm using it within my own value system? And I think that would be a wonderful thing for all of us to learn. You know, like, you meet someone who's significantly different from you, who has a different belief system, who grew up differently. You don't just have to say, well, they're different from me and therefore we're done. Right? Can you not look and say, there's some really...
Okay. All right.
Are we back?
Yes.
Okay. Is it still going? Okay, awesome. So, how can I use that in my belief system?
Yes.
You know, and I think that if we could learn to do that, we don't have to change who we are to understand other people. And we don't have to change who we are to use good that we find in other places.
Yes. True.
And so I think that's something else I would like people to take away from the book.
Oh, okay. Can you read us an excerpt out of your book?
I can, but you know, I wasn't expecting that. So let me pull my book. Hold on just a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
How long did you want it? Bam! How long did you want it to be?
About one paragraph, 1 or 2 paragraphs. I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. Let me read this here. All right. I'm going to read the last paragraph of the epilogue, or
Okay.
of the prologue, I mean.
Yes.
Okay. So at this time, just to give you, Maggie has decided that she has hurt someone, and it's upsetting to her, and she is going to just like pull away from society. And this is what's going on here.
Okay.
Though not banished in the same way as Wea, having to live among the trees on the edge of civilization, Maggie determined to live out her days in the small cabin. She did not want room and ease in a large garden. She did not want a front porch for sipping lemonade or a kitchen table large enough for guests. She didn't want to be reminded of her family or the storeroom of herbs. She simply wanted to be left alone to atone for her sins.
All right. Okay. I will get the book because it sounds very intriguing. And
Thank
I
you so
always
much.
like to I love reading.
Right.
So,
Right.
that's how it all starts. How we start, as kids, we love to read. We love to read. Then, maybe the older we get, we like, okay, maybe I can write a book, or maybe I
I
can,
could write.
So, what would you tell your aspiring authors who are thinking about writing their own books?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is do it. Like don't wait for the perfect time. I think a lot of people think, well, I should have a course, or I should have a degree, or I need, don't, because you don't get better at writing thinking about it.
Yeah.
You only get better at writing by doing it. And so the first few things that you write, they're not going to be very good, but that's okay.
Yeah.
They're your first, and you get them out on paper. And then I
Yes.
think the second thing I would say is, once you have something that you feel is pretty good, let someone else read it, and then listen to what they have to say.
Yes.
Because you're not the person that you're writing for. You're writing for someone else to read it. So listen and get their input, and be open to making some changes.
Yes.
And then the third thing that I say almost contradicts it, but not really, and that's, you don't have to listen to everyone.
Yeah.
So go ahead and listen to the person who says, oh, I would have liked to have seen this. Try it out. See if it works for you. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't, that's okay too. And
Yeah.
you can say, well, that was a good idea, but I'm not going to do that. And that's all right, because there's more than one way to write a book, and there's more than one kind of reader, right? And just
Yes.
because someone likes one book doesn't mean they like all books. And so
Yeah.
it's okay. So it's okay to say, I tried that and it doesn't work for me.
Yes, yes. So true, so true. Can you tell us the experience with the publishing process?
Oh, publishing is hard. Publishing is really hard. And it's so different to me than the writing process. Writers, I have found other authors, other aspiring authors, even award-winning, well-known authors tend to be very friendly and open and giving and willing to share and explain, and the publishing companies don't feel that way. It's very closed, and you send things off and you don't hear from them, and it's just very, I don't know. I just find it to be so crazy that you have the authors that are so giving, and the publishing side is not. I ended up going with a hybrid publisher,
Okay.
which is kind of a combination between a small press and self-publishing,
Yes.
and it worked beautifully for me. As a woman I'm now 60, I didn't want to wait years and years and years in hopes of finding an agent, and then in hopes of finding a publisher, and then in hopes of it getting printed before I died. I wanted it out there,
Like now.
And yeah, and so the hybrid publishing was a really good fit for me, because it gave me everything I wanted with self-publishing, which was like control over my own work, and control over my covers, and control over where I sold my book.
Yeah.
But it also gave me professional help, so
Yeah.
that I did have a professional cover designer, and a professional editor, and a professional proofreader, and someone who knew how to put it up on Amazon and get all of that part right.
Yes.
And so for me, it was a really good process.
Oh, okay. So, to this date, can you possibly tell us how many books have you sold of this latest?
Okay, so it came out in January.
Okay.
And so it has only been, let's see, February, March, April. It's not even been 3 months yet.
Okay.
And I don't know the exact number. I'm waiting for that. But I'm going to say, well, I know I've sold 150 from my own stash at home.
Okay.
And then I have probably sold 300 or 400.
Mm-hmm.
So over 500 in 3 months. So I feel really good about that.
Oh, okay. Congratulations on
Thank you.
the numbers.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say, are there any upcoming projects or works in progress that you want to share?
So I do have a short story coming out in an anthology called Feisty Deeds.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming out on, I think it's Women's Fiction Day,
Oh,
which is in June, like June 8th. I can't remember the exact day, but that's coming out in
okay.
June. So
Um,
it's called Feisty Deeds, and it's an
yes.
anthology with over 20 authors who've put in short stories.
Okay.
And then I am currently writing a book that's very different from my others. It
Mhm.
is about a woman named Peg,
Yes.
and it is a funny look at a woman going through menopause.
Okay.
And I got this idea because I read a book as a little girl called Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume.
Okay.
And they turned it into a movie recently, and I read
Okay.
an article or something about it. And
Hmm.
I thought, I wonder whatever happened to Margaret. And
Okay.
my answer came in my head, which was she now goes by Peg and she's going through menopause. And
Okay.
immediately this book started to go. And so it's just a really
Yeah.
funny look at all the things that women have to go through when
Yeah.
hormones start flipping all over the place.
I know, right? I know, right? Uh, that's our bodies. Our bodies just go into chaos and
Yes,
what you
complete chaos,
doing
right?
and just throw us all off track and we got to figure out how
Exactly.
to put it back on the track and and things of that nature.
Exactly.
How do you engage with your readers in the audience outside of writing?
So I have a newsletter, and anybody who's listening to this that wants to get on my newsletter, just head to my website, which is my name, Teri M Brown, Teri with
Mhm,
one R.
mhm,
Um, and you can sign up for the website. I'm also on social media. Pretty
mhm.
much any of them, you can find me there. I'm still
Yes.
trying to figure out like TikTok. I don't understand it very well, but I'm there.
Mhm.
I don't know that I'm doing it right, but I'm there.
Okay.
Um, and I also love to go to book clubs. So I've
Hmm.
been invited to a lot of book clubs, and when they're discussing one of my books.
Okay.
So I like those in-person kind of events like that. And I've even told people that if you want me at a book club but you don't live nearby, I'll
Mhm.
Zoom in. And
Okay.
so, I'll jump on a Zoom call and then we'll discuss the book. And so that's always a lot of fun as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So last, uh, so I see that you have all of the social media platforms that she's on Facebook, she's on Instagram, she's on TikTok, she's on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, or you have all of these platforms. And I want to tell my audience you have no excuse you can't find her. You got no excuse. Okay. She got a website. It's www dot www.terrymBrown.com.
Right.
Correct?
That's
And
correct.
you can find her also, on you can get all information in the ticker table at the bottom of the screen that we have that is scrolling. You can find her on Amazon, uh uh so many book blurb
Yeah,
and
Book Bub and
mhm.
you Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
and you pretty much, if you can't find me,
Uh-huh.
then I'm really sad because I'm out there everywhere. So
Right.
the only way that it might be hard to find me is it's Terry with one R.
Yes.
So don't spell me Terry with two
Do
R's and don't
uh-huh.
put a Y on the end. But
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
spell my name right, Terry M
Hmm.
Brown, you're going to find me.
Okay. All right. I want to thank you, Miss Terry. It has been an honor and a privilege to
Thank you
have
so
you on
much.
Authors Excerpt Sunday podcast. And when you come out with your next book, come back now and
I
tell
will.
us tell us all the good info, okay?
Okay, I
And
will.
and thank you so much, Miss Terry.
Thank
And
you.
I want to say thank you to my audience for coming in and listening to the podcast. I want to say it has been my honor and privilege to interview you, Miss Teri, and come back with your next masterpiece. Okay?
I will. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, and you have a blessed day. Okay?
You too. Bye now.
All right. Bye bye.